This documentary is inspired by the research and discoveries carried out and conducted by Valerio Petretto. They are published in the book Shadows of Deception. In this series of documentaries, we will analyze some aspects of this research, and we will discuss of some of the most interesting questions posed by the author, whose answers you'll find in his books. The wind of life in the Gnostic Genesis. Why call the laboratory where the man was created Bitshamti, the house where the wind of life is blown? Was not it easier to call it the house where the human being is created? Or the house where Nin.T creates humans? This detail was ignored by the totality of researchers who ventured into the interpretation of Sumerian texts. Even Sitchin underestimated the subject by assuming that the breath of life simply represented the alien DNA or something similar. But the meaning of this particular name, given to the Anunnaki's laboratory, could be much deeper and more enlightening. Almost all the myths of the Genesis speak about it. The creator of man modeled the body, but then, to animate it, he had to blow life into him. What is it? Is it just a strange metaphor? Or is it some unknown procedure that was used to give life to the bodies created by the Anunnakis? In support of the suspicion that there is more, we find further clues in a very important piece of knowledge, ignored for millennia. Something that comes to our aid. Another version of Genesis, the Gnostic one, found in the papyrus of Nag Hammadi. We are in December 1945. At Nag Hammadi, particularly in an area near the rocky wall of Jabal al-Tarif, about 450 kilometers south of Cairo, in Egypt. An inhabitant of the village of Al-Kasr, in a Senomite monastery, finds an ancient jar containing 13 papyruses. The texts contained in the ancient documents are philosophical codes of a Gnostic nature. Gnosticism was a philosophical, religious, and esoteric movement of initiatic character, a very articulate and complex spiritual knowledge. It seems to come from the Hellenistic Greek-Roman world, whose maximum spread occurred between the 2nd and 4th century AD. The term Gnosticism derives from the Greek word gnosis, that is knowledge, which was the goal of this movement. Although it would appear to be primarily in a Christian context, in the past some scholars believed that Gnosticism preceded Christianity and included pre-Christian religious beliefs and spiritual practices. It is assumed that Gnosticism shares its origins with Christianity, Neoplatonism, Judaism of the Second Temple, the mystery religions, and the Zoroastrianism. The understanding of Gnosticism has changed radically with the discovery of the Nag Hammadi codes, which led scholars to revise previous hypotheses. Besides the so-called Gnostic Gospels, the Nag Hammadi papyruses also included 3 works belonging to the Corpus Hermeticum, and a partial translation of the Republic of Plato. It is hypothesized that these codes belonged to the library of a monastery in the area, and that the monks hid them to be saved from destruction. When the power of the Catholic Church became so oppressive and dictatorial that it considered Gnosticism as heresy and condemned to death anyone who pursued its study. Strange fact that religion is always a bitter enemy of knowledge. The texts of Nag Hammadi are written in Coptic, although most of them, or perhaps all, have been translated from the Greek. The most important work of the 46 present in them is the Gospel of Thomas. The one found in the codes is the only complete known text of the work. Thanks to this discovery, scholars found the presence of fragments of these texts in the manuscripts of Osirinko, discovered in 1898, and found traces of them in the quotations of writings of the Fathers of the Church. The dating of the manuscripts goes back to the 3rd and 4th centuries. while for the original Greek texts, although still controversial, a dating between the 1st and 2nd centuries is generally accepted. The curious thing about this story, which makes us understand how certain idealisms contrary to the dissemination of knowledge are still strong, is that the papyruses remained hidden for a long time after the discovery. Following a complex affair, after being dispersed in a very suspicious manner, they were recovered and made available to scholars. The Gnostic texts in the Nag Hammadi library contain a version of the Genesis with illuminating traits, of which one cannot ignore the existence when tries to understand the real events that occurred during the Anunnaki's times, when Enki decided to create the man-slave. The Apocrypha of John Long version, for example, offers a variant of the Genesis quite different from what we know. The Gnostic texts identify the creators of man as demons and not as divinity, insinuating the suspicion that the human body was created purposely defective and full of physical and mental weaknesses. The apocryphal Gospel of John goes further. After describing the engineering work carried out by these demons, extraterrestrials, called archons, we come to paragraph N.18 entitled, "And for a long time he remained inanimate and did not move." The beginning of the paragraph shows the following passage. But the mother of Yaldabaoth wanted to take back the power that she had delivered to the chief archon. She ardently asked the merciful, the Father-Mother of all, to help. With his sacred command she sent down the 5 lights, in the forms of the chief advisors of Yaldabaoth. This led to the removal of the divine power of Yaldabaoth's mother from him. They said to Yaldabaoth, "Breathe some of your spirit in the face of man. Then his body will rise." He breathed some of his spirit into man, the spirit that was the divine power of his mother. He did not understand what was happening, because he lived in ignorance. All the divine power of his mother, sent by Yaldabaoth, entered the psychic body of man by modeling itself on the primordial image. The human body moved. It grew in power, and he shinned. The demonic forces of Yaldabaoth envied man. Through their joint efforts, which they had placed on the creature, they had given them their power. His understanding became noticeably superior to that of the one who had created it, and even superior to that of the sovereign leader himself. Thus, if the Gnostic reconstruction of creation contained truthful details, we can imagine that the only creation of the human body was not enough. Adam for a long time remained inanimate and did not move. Does this mean that the body was empty, unconscious? It was necessary the intervention of the mother of Yaldabaoth, a woman called the Mother, just like the Sumerian myth of Nin.T. She decided, with her mysterious sacred command, to bring down the 5 lights in the forms of the principal counselors of Yaldabaoth. They said to Yaldabaoth, "Breathe some of your spirit in the face of man. Then his body will rise." Was this what happened in the house where the wind of life is blown? But what exactly is the wind of life? At this point in our investigation, we need to broaden our horizons, necessary action if we want to go beyond the myth and discover the truth. In the next part we will touch unexpected themes, following the red line that leads us to discover the real extraterrestrial activities on Earth. You are about to discover one of the most hidden secrets of human history. Something terrifying but enlightening. The time has come to set aside the lies and face the truth. Thanks for watching us here. See you next episode. Stay with us.